It is impossible to find out more than basic information about this case. There is no sort of reporting about motivation or how it all went down exactly, but it did happen. Not long from where I live actually, although it happened many years before any of us were born. It happened 177 years ago in Anunsjö, a small community sitting close to the harbor town of Örnsköldsvik, directly translated to Eagle Shields Bay. I had no idea this case ever happened. It was by accident I even found out about it. You see, I was heading to the local police station to get a new ID card, and there on display was a framed piece of paper telling the story of Sven Svensson and how he murdered his entire family in August of 1843. On display was a fragile piece of paper documenting his confession, unreadable unfortunately, but there was also the murder weapons. Very interesting to see the instruments one person used to slaughter mercilessly in real life. This feature will unfortunately be short, but remember that there will be two. Sven had 9 children, and on that night, the night between August 11 and August 12, 1843, he slaughtered 7 of them. It is one of the worst mass murders in Swedish history, which makes the lack of information even more confusing. He used a hammer and a foldable razor to commit his slaughter. One of his sons was away on vacation and another one of them managed to escape, but the rest fell victim to either hammer or blade. I'm not sure which one he used on who. The survivors were Sven Jr., 21 years old, and Johan, 19 years old. The eldest survived. Among the victims, 8 in total, was Sven's wife, Brita Johansdotter. She was born in the year 1800 and only became 43 years old before her murderous husband snuffed out her life. There was Sakri Svensson, 17 years old, Jonas Svensson, 14 years old, Per Svensson, 11 years old, his oldest daughter, Anna Margareta Svensdotter, also 11 when she died, his second daughter, Brita Katarina Svensdotter, 9 years old, his youngest son, Erik Svensson, 6 years old, and his youngest daughter, Märta Svensdotter, only 4 years old. They all fell victim to blade and hammer, swung by the hands of their own father that bright summer night. Sven Svensson was caught shortly after the murders had been committed. He was sentenced to death. He needed to pay for the massacre he had orchestrated and performed. He was beheaded on October 11, 1845, leaving 2 sons behind and 7 children dead. Bogota, Colombia used to be a very interesting place. In 1986 it became the center of attention, not for cartel-related business, not because Pablo Escobar or the Cali cartel involved themselves in violence and death, but it was a lone wolf, a man named Campo Delgado. He just wasn't the same after the Vietnam War. He was now 52 years old, and a darkness was molding inside of him, a darkness born in the midst of war in Vietnam, a darkness suppressed and held down for years after, until December 4th, 1986 in a restaurant in Bogota, Colombia. At least that's what he would have wanted you to think. The truth is, the darkness wasn't born in battle against Vietnamese guerrilla fighters. It was born out of something natural, something he already had inside of him. Truth is, he did serve the US military, but according to documents, he wouldn't have fought in Vietnam at all. He had served between 1975 and 1978, and the fact that he may have seen battle is possible, but his claims of being a Vietnam War veteran was simply not true. But regardless of all that, Campo Delgado was about to explode, about to go out in a blaze of glory. They would remember his name. Seemed like the only way to receive the fame he deserved was to be bad, like Pablo Escobar, the champion of Colombia, a terrorist and a killer. Lone perpetrators committing mass murder has been going on for a pretty long time. These days we think of school shootings and lone terrorist warriors fighting for their extreme Islamic views, but in Bogota, 1986, one man with a revolver in a crowded restaurant racked up a death toll of 20 human beings. The day before, December 3rd, 1986, Campo withdrew all his money from the bank and went and got himself a brand new Smith & Wesson revolver, along with about 500 rounds of ammunition. Nora Ricon, a single mother, was living in her apartment in Bogota with her 14-year-old daughter Claudia Ricon. Delgado knew Claudia. He had given her English lessons before, but on that day he didn't come to teach. He came to destroy. Usually there was 5 people living in the apartment. Nora also had an 11-year-old son as well as her mother and her mom's friend living with her, but on that day there was only Nora and her 14-year-old daughter at home. It was a vicious, brutal crime scene, but it was only the prelude to a massive massacre, to a spree. Nora, the mother, had been gagged and bound. Afterwards, Campo had stabbed her 4 times in the chest, killing her. But as it usually seems to be with the killer's eye cover, Claudia was a different story. There was no sexual assault as far as I'm aware, but with Claudia he bound and gagged her, and then stabbed the 14-year-old girl 22 times, leaving her mutilated corpse on the bed, the sheets soaking in blood. Campo Delgado went back home after the double murder. He was on a spree. He was going out with a bang. At home he got into a heated argument with his mother Rita Delgado. At some point during the argument, Campo lashed out at his own mother and stabbed her once in the neck, a fatal thrust. After killing her, he wrapped up her body in newspapers and set it on fire. Delgado ran down the stairs of the apartment complex, screaming, "Fire! Fire!" He had brought his revolver and 5 boxes of ammo with him and ran up to apartment 301, where 2 women were living. They opened the door and he immediately killed them both, 1 gunshot to the temple of each woman. His body count was already at 5. The lady who lived next door, apartment 302, opened her door, alarmed by the fire, and Delgado did the same to her. Instant death. 6 victims. Downstairs he rang another door. There was 4 female students living inside that apartment, and 3 of them would never see the light of day again. He rang the door, asking to call the fire department, and as one of the girls were on the phone and Delgado inside, a shot rang out. Then another, and another. 2 of the girls died instantly. 1 died later on in the hospital, but the 4th managed to survive as she jumped out of the window into the courtyard. That is, 10 victims. Delgado ran to a friend of his. He didn't kill them, he spared them. All he did was babble and rant, telling them he was leaving Colombia. He seemed panicked, but he left the house with his victim toll still at 10. By the time he left for the restaurant, he had discarded the knife he had used on his first 3 victims. His crimes were well known at that point. Police and media were desperately looking for the spree killer on the run in Bogota. Delgado sat at a table, ordered some food, a bottle of wine. He went to the restroom several times, and after he was done with his meal, he ordered some drinks, read a magazine, and went to the bar to have more drinks. I would say he was mustering up the courage to commit his massacre, but since he already had killed 10 people, I'd say that wasn't what he was doing. The patrons in the restaurant had no idea what they were in for that day. Delgado picked up his revolver and began executing people. He was cold as ice. He had a method. He would corner his victim, make sure they had nowhere to go, nowhere to escape, and then he would execute them, point blank with a headshot. It seems hypocritical, but he had a code of sorts. He had promised himself to not kill any children, but wasn't Claudia Ricon a child, only 14? Despite his moral code, however, one of his victims was a 6-year-old girl. Apparently his gun had misfired. He managed to shoot 32 people in the restaurant, killing 20 of them. It seems weird that a victim toll that high was caused with a revolver. They don't carry a large capacity of ammo and they can be slow to reload. But he had experience in the army. He was cold and determined, as his victims were hysterical, panicked and scared for their lives. That revolver, though, would be his downfall as police arrived. He exchanged some fire with them, But of course he had to reload after only 6 rounds. While he was reloading, he was shot in the temple by one of the officers. Suicide by cop. He left 30 bodies behind in his rampage throughout the city of Bogota. I've been having some serious issues with the audio for this video. This is the, I think, 6th time I record this. I never meant for it to be this late, but I didn't want to release it until I got the audio thing fixed. Anyway, I had an idea. I had an idea of trying something different in a future video. It's not a radical change, it will still be true crime, but you may know I have a past record of making movie reviews and such things, and I had an idea to combine them. I want to look at the ways TV shows perceive serial killers versus how actual serial killers operate and work. See what they get wrong and see what they may get right. It won't be a very recurring thing, once in a while. So, until next time, I hope you enjoyed tonight's double feature.